Welcome to the Actually You Can podcast. I'm Miff Galloway, a performance coach passionate about supporting ambitious and high-performing women just like you who know they have untapped potential just waiting to be unleashed. If you're looking to massively up-level your performance in all areas of life, you've come to the right place. My goal on this podcast is to take you beneath the surface so you can connect with yourself on a deeper level while providing you with valuable insights and the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges and go after your goals with strength, clarity, and wisdom. If you're ready to uncover the truth which lies underneath so you can recognize your powerful feminine leadership style, pursue your goals unapologetically, and thrive in every aspect of your life, hit the follow button and get ready to explore the incredible possibilities that lie within you. Together, we'll uncover your next steps in achieving peak performance, because actually, you can. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Actually You Can. For this episode, I have the pleasure of having an incredible conversation with Rand Selig, an author and expert in the field of thriving. We discuss the 4 pillars of thriving and how you can use these to achieve a true state of fulfillment in your life. Now, I've done my fair share of research in this area and I was still able to take so much away from this conversation, and I know you will too. There is also a guest appearance from my 2 little dogs, Pickles and Wiggle, as they were kindly letting me know that the mailman had arrived. So no doubt you'll pick up on that too. But that's enough from me. Buckle in and let's get started with the show. Hi, Rand. Welcome to the show. It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Myth, it's an absolute pleasure.
And I'm super excited to have you on the show to talk about all things thriving. I'm interested to hear, what does thriving mean to you? What does it look like? How would someone know that they're truly thriving?
I think it's a very different thing for different people. Although what I'm talking about in its core concepts applies to everybody, regardless of your age or stage in life, or whether you're male or female, whether you're a leader in your organization or whether you're just going about business in your own world. Thriving, to me, it's important to realize, I think thriving is about the climate. It's the average over time. It's not just today's weather, because anybody can have a good day or a bad day. Thriving is a function of many things. So if you're thriving personally because you're mentally, emotionally healthy, or physically healthy, you like the work you're doing, that's not enough. To me, that doesn't completely fill the bill for thriving. Thriving includes having really deep and enduring relationships with others, first with yourself, but then with other people. It means that you're out in the world thriving, which could have to do with, in some fashion, either being generous, being of service to others, even if there's no direct benefit to you, not initially. There is hopefully psychological benefit that you're feeling, and you feel that the work you're doing is important for the planet. And lastly, a 4th dimension to this is you need to be thriving as you move ever forward in life, which means that you're a lifelong learner, that you're learning about yourself as we go along. It's not a one and done kind of proposition. You change, the world changes. Got to keep understanding who you are and what's going on. Being curious is so much fun and so important to do. And evolving. My own journey is one where I have very intentionally said, I want to continue to be a better person. And every year I say, this particular area is what I'm going to focus on this year. Being a better listener, being more patient, those kinds of things. And I can see, I've mapped it, so I can see the person I was 10 years or 20 years ago and who I am today. So thriving is all those things. And it's a joy to have it. You become much more attractive to other people. People reach out to you when you're thriving. They see it. It's kind of comes from the inside out. Your face shows it. There's a smile that comes very easily and automatically, and you have a way of understanding what struggles are all about. One of my favorite quotes, and there are a lot of quotes in my book, is the struggle ends when gratitude begins.
And you mentioned your personal journey. You mentioned you remember who you were 10, 20 years ago. Who was that person? And have you always been thriving, or what has been your experience with thriving?
I have had a very good life. I've worked very hard. I have had some bumps along the way, but I believe in myself. I have a lot of self-esteem, a lot of, some people would say self-love, and it's helped me enormously to get through various issues, whether they were medical issues associated with having eye problems or a very difficult relationship with my father. These things I was able to get on top of and get the support I needed and to move forward. My dad's turning 102 on Sunday, and I have a very nice relationship with him now. 15 years ago, it was tough and we struggled, but I worked at that. I had to let go of the idea that I knew better, that it was kind of like the old bull and the young bull. And I realized after a while, I wasn't going to change him, but there was every possibility that I could change how I was dealing with him. And so that was on me to do. Sometimes what we have to do in life is manage up, whether it's with parents or bosses. This is if you want something to happen, sometimes you can't just sit back and say, it's not my job. That's the boss. The boss should be doing that. No, you got to say, I need this, or I need to make this change to make it work out for me and for the environment.
And you mentioned you've had a really good life. And so a lot of the people I talk to on the podcast, they've overcome either extreme adversity, had really big challenges in their life, and that prompted this huge journey of self-exploration and ultimately led them to whatever the topic was they were talking about the podcast. And I really resonate with what you're saying is like, I've lived a very privileged life and I haven't had to experience any, I guess it's all relative, right? But I haven't had to overcome what I would deem to be really extraordinary challenges or adversity. I mean, I'm very grateful in that sense. And so I feel like a lot of listeners could resonate with that in terms of life might be okay, like it's not awesome, but they're happy with it. They feel they should feel grateful for what's going on with them. What would encourage someone to move towards thriving? I mean, a lot of people go, oh, I should just be happy with what I have. Like there's nothing ultimately wrong with it. What's the difference between that and being, you mentioned the word gratitude, and then allowing yourself to go, actually, no, I just really want to thrive.
I think the answer to that is a combination of a couple of really important nuggets here. One is you got to know yourself. You got to spend the time becoming self-aware. You have to know what you stand for, what your values are, what's important to you. And the real emphasis here is on you. You know, we live in a world with social media and other things where it's very easy to say, well, this is what other people are doing. And maybe what other people are doing fits you to a T, and you'd like to do that too. But in many, many cases, you are unique. You are your own person. And what everybody else is doing isn't really what you want to do. So you have to have the courage to step up and say, one, I've done the work. I know who I am. I know what I stand for, and I'm willing to go there. Swim against the tide in some cases, the tide of family or culture, and just flow with that. So that's really a really key ingredient to getting on with thriving. You have to be motivated. This is when it starts happening, it gets better and better, kind of like a domino effect. And you get reinforced and encouraged, but to keep taking little step all along the way takes a certain amount of discipline. I think this is a bedrock for who I am. Starting way back when I was a teenager, I was very disciplined about things, becoming an excellent student or pursuing project, uh, volunteering and stepping up to leadership positions. I did that with a lot of discipline because I was always doing more than one thing at a time.
And so I'd love to go into more detail about the 4 pillars that you have for thriving. Are you able to share with the listeners what that framework is?
Well, the first one, thriving personally, in my book, it's half the book because it is absolutely so foundational. It's chapter one is building character, and the chapter goes into lots and lots of different elements of what character is about. It includes things like with an assessment, the link there, are you introverted or extroverted? We live in an extroverted world. So what if you are introverted? How do you deal with that? How do you cope? In my book, in the appendix, I have a paragraph on 75 books that I've read that really impacted me. And the one that is there about introversion, extroversion is a stupendous book. It's called Quiet. And I highly recommend anybody who either is an introvert and maybe struggling a little bit with that, or maybe has children or friends who are introverted. And again, being buffeted by the winds of extroverted society. So it goes from building character, which includes, of course, uh, values and clarification of what your strengths are, what areas. And again, these are assessment tools in the book that you can say, wow, I'm good at this, and I score very highly when I score myself. But this one, no surprise. That's one that I'm not I know I have to work at that. And then you can decide, am I going to work on it, or I'm just gonna be passive about it and just hope for the best, which may not come, but you can lay back and try to ignore that. So it starts with building character. It talks about a relationship with ourselves. I say that's the most important relationship we'll ever have in our lives, is the one with ourselves. It goes on to managing ourselves. Then it goes from there into money. A lot of people are confused and plagued by the whole financial scene that they're involved with. And I talk a lot about defining success your way, which is a lot more than just financial things. And making it work for you, even if it means not having the maximum amount of income, but having other things in your life that you really value and you're able to pursue because you have realized the trade-off between extra work and these other things, relationships, family, health, and so on, spirituality. And it goes from there. So the first half of the book is, and it ends, the last chapter is about having purpose and meaning in life. And that was very purposely the last chapter because I wanted, in that first section, I wanted people to ground themselves with these other things. Their emotions. There's a chapter on emotions. There's a chapter on gratitude. There's a chapter on spirituality and religion, where I advocate for you, make it work for you, whatever. And to me, and this is the personal commentary, it's more important to be spiritual. Spirituality for me allows me to be humble. It allows me to be in awe, in wonder. And I find that mostly by going outside in nature. And of course, I live in a beautiful place, and I can go out the front door and be in nature, and it calms me down. It slows me down. It allows that solitude and appreciation, deep appreciation. And so I become a much littler person. And that's good. That's really good for me. So that's the first half of the book, which is thriving personally.
Are you struggling to reach your goals? Good mental health and physical health are the foundation of success. We often think we need to make drastic changes, but these can leave us feeling discouraged and stuck. The truth is, sustainable transformation happens through small, consistent actions taken over time. This is why I've created a list of over 40 strategies and activities that can help you to achieve the transformation you've been dreaming of without overwhelming changes. The strategies involve simply changing the way you approach common tasks and many of the actions can be done in less than 5 minutes. So don't let feeling overwhelmed hold you back from committing to improving your mental and physical health. Download your guide for free using the link in the show notes and start your journey to optimal mental and physical health today. Now back to the show. I love that you've dedicated half the book to that important subject. And I'm not sure about you, but I often see a lot of people when they're looking to make some sort of change in their life. It's like, okay, what's the plan? What plan can you give me? What's the quick fix? When actually, and it looks like you're sharing this in your book too, a lot of it requires a lot of introspection. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, haven't, whether it's they're fearful of what they might uncover, they've never been invited to look introspectively before, or they don't know how to even go about it. I love that it sounds like you're providing such powerful tools to do that in a really broad and holistic way.
One of the big themes in this arena is being a lifelong learner. And that covers a lot of ground. It includes just being curious. You come across something, you say, well, I don't know much about that, but I'm curious. How did it get to be that way? Or how does it work? What are the underpinnings of it biologically or in the built environment that we live in? So being curious, and it makes life much more fun. I think people I've talked to say that when they go on vacation, when they travel, that's what they're doing. They're saying, "Oh, this is different food. People are, behaving and dressing differently and so on, and that's fun." But when they come back, they settle into, a narrower path because it's very familiar. And I'm saying you can carry this forward in everything you do. You just look, keep opening your eyes and be curious. There are many side benefits, bonuses of being curious. And one really important one is that you can suspend judgment and
Mhm.
which will help in conflict resolution. You think about it and you say, well, why did I get into a little bit of a tiff with that person? Well, often it's because you have a different opinion about something, but you might know your opinion. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you don't really understand their opinion. And if you get sort of face to face with them, that can lead to a lot of stress and may not help the relationship. If instead you say, well, let me just get away from the direct thing and just be curious and ask them questions. Hey, that's really interesting. I don't think that way, or I don't really understand why you think that way. Could you tell me more? And be very serious about that. I mean, serious in an honest way. You're not just sort of, trying to, blow it off. You really do want to hear what they have to say. And you don't have to then all of a sudden say, oh my gosh, your point of view is so right and I was so wrong. No, no. But you're instead opening up to the possibility of learning something new and maybe expanding your own perspective on something. Very important. So being a lifelong learner is is a huge ingredient in life, and I think it propels us in this direction of thriving.
Yeah, what I'm hearing in that, the word that's coming up is growth mindset. And it seems like what is also key to thriving is having that growth mindset. I wrote down here, you mentioned defining success in your way, and it took me back to a workshop I was facilitating earlier this week at work. And the goal was to come up with as many innovative ideas as we could. And I was astounded at just the lack of innovation. And it made me realize we're so conditioned to what we know and the environments that we're in. It was really challenging for the group to expand outside of what we knew in our own backyard and what we're currently doing. And so spent a lot of time trying to unlock a bit more creativity and imagination. But I love what you mentioned here with just being curious, suspending judgment. Go, okay, what if anything was possible? What if we didn't do things the current way that we were doing things, and just opening up possibilities as a result of that, I think was really incredible. But it's very timely that you mentioned that, because I think, defining success your way, if I was to ask, I'm sure a lot of people what success was, I'm sure they would rattle off lots of money in the bank, house with a white picket fence, loving family and kids. In reality, that success could look really different to a lot of people if you're willing to open yourself up to the possibilities and be curious about what that could be. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree, and I don't want to move away from this really starting point. It's fun. It's just fun to be curious and to be this lifelong learner. And as I say, there's these side benefits that come along the way. And Miff, I just wanted to share a thought. Here in the United States and maybe in other places around the world, we've gone through the last several years of talking about diversity, and we're still talking about diversity. It may not be quite as in our faces about it, but it's still very much there. One of the diversities that is not talked about enough is diversity of thinking.
Yes.
And this opens the door. I mean, if you have everybody around the table who has pretty much the same kind of education, their walk of life is very similar, then their ability to come up with brand new novel ideas is not going to be the same as if you had a group of people with very different ways of thinking. And so I just encourage people to, when you're thinking about adding more people to the table, more people to your board, think about the diversity of thinking.
Oh, it's so expansive to do that. I'm very blessed to be exposed to the diverse range of expertise through the podcast, cultures through work that I do. It's just a true blessing. And so we talked a lot about thriving personally and what does that mean? And it sounds like that's really the foundation to do anything else. Like the work that I do with my clients as well, as I put a lot of emphasis on physical and mental health. I'm like, if you don't have that, anything, nothing else is truly possible, or it will, but you won't be able to really unlock your full potential in those areas if you're being challenged by physical and mental health. So I love that we're aligned there. I'd love to hear more about what are the next pillars. Once we're thriving personally, what do we do from there?
Well, before I answer that question, let me just mention one thing. Since you mentioned mental health, what I talk about, because I do have a degree in psychology, but I'm not licensed to do the mental health part of things. But what I do talk about is emotional health.
Yes.
And emotional health, I simplify. I have to sort of tell people I'm simplifying this, but there are three things that really, really will help if you're paying attention to these three. One is to stop self-sabotaging. And self-sabotaging is when you don't even allow yourself to get into the game. You don't apply for the job. You don't volunteer to do something. You don't follow up with somebody who said, "Hey, it'd be really nice to have a coffee," or let's exchange some email or something like that. And you say, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do any of that. They're really not interested in me, or I'll never get that position. No point in applying." This is shooting yourself in the foot. It's not helpful. If you apply and you don't get accepted, or you follow up and nothing happens with the follow up, so what? Keep going. But who knows what'll happen? So a lot of people, I'm surprised because it's not the way I come at life, but a lot of people I see are doing self-sabotaging. A second of these emotional health things is forgiving. So in the walk of life, I don't care whether you're 25 or 85, things have happened where you feel hurt, or something happened where you feel that somebody did something to you, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, but it sits there, and it could sit there for a long time. And so, and of course, there's where you yourself have done things, again, intentionally or unintentionally, and you need to make amends. So in all this realm, it can be heavy, heavy rocks that you're carrying around with you in your backpack of life. And I suggest to people, work at that.
Yeah.
Learn to forgive. Forgive yourself. Turn that into valuable lessons so that you don't do it again. And make amends. Apologize. If it's something somebody else did, be honest. Did you have zero role in that, or did you have some part in making that situation happen? And so maybe to open the door, you need to apologize for them for the part you played. And don't say, "Oh, I only had a 5% role in that problem." You are the lion's share of the problem. No, you don't need to do that. You just say, "I apologize. I'm really sorry that our relationship, went sideways or ended, and I just want to reach out and apologize. And if there's a way of making amends, then do that too." So this second piece of forgiving is a big step, and sometimes it accumulates and compounds over time. It gets worse and worse. And then the third one is learning to let go. So this surprises people because they the people who know me think, wow, you are like in control. You've run your own firm for over 3 decades. You've been very successful. Your family is amazing, and you raised your kids with a certain kind of high standards. So, how can you abandon control? And I go, well, no, it's really letting go is not about abandoning control because we do control several things in our lives at any time. One is our attitude. Don't let go of that. Be a positive attitude. We control our effort. We control our behavior and we control our action. So I'm not talking about those things. Those are near and dear and should be appreciated. What I'm talking about is the letting go of stuff that is completely out of your control. And where I first discovered this, again, having a long, long history of being in control and having a lot of success, I watched my adult children, very terrific people and very successful in their lives, making decisions that I would not have made for myself and I would not have made for them. And originally I was kind of struggling with that because why? I was not in control. And I realized they're living their own life and they're doing well. So stop being start learning to let go. And I like doing a little exercise. If we could do it together, it could be
Yeah.
fun. What I do is I hold up my fist and I'm holding tight to something I've not been able to let go of. It could be something recent, could be a long, long time ago. And I see the white knuckles because I'm holding on so tightly. And I flip my fist over and I see the white knuckles again. I'm still holding on very tightly. But then, because maybe I'm paying attention to the book I wrote about thriving, I say, well, I'm in charge. I have power. I have the power to make choice. And the choice I'm making right now is to let go of that. And then I open my hand, I wiggle my fingers and my thumb, and my hand rises because as I let go,
Yeah.
I'm letting go of this heavy weight. And I used to do that very regularly. Well, about 15 years ago, I was doing this at least weekly. And now I'm doing it very irregularly because I've become more humble. I'm more aware of how little I actually do control. And life's good. But when I do that little exercise now, it just helps me. I smile and I go, yeah, there you go again. Just let that one go. So the really great emotional health things that I encourage people to embrace.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that little exercise. And yes, I feel lighter already. And it's so interesting, like hearing, if I reflect on some of the clients that I have, a lot of stress is caused by them trying to control things that they really have no business trying to control in the first place. The only things that we can control, as you mentioned, are things related to ourselves, whether it's our attitudes, our actions, and all that sort of stuff. It's when we have a perception of potentially how people should interact with us, what they should do, how they should live their lives. And there's a beautiful quote that I'm definitely going to butcher that. It's along the lines of, if you're in someone else's business and living in someone else's life, who's in yours? And that's what I like to really bring back to is yes, you can have input into someone else's, but at the end of the day, who's going to be living your life? Who's going to be taking control of that? Because you're the only one who can do that.
So spot on. Yeah.
Love it. And so, pillar number 2,
Yes.
let's dive into that.
So pillar number 2 is just a couple of chapters in my book. It's about thriving with others. And one of the chapters is about relationships with other people and how to build relationships. So I was very struck years ago by talking to a bunch of my male friends and said, who are your friends? And often they would just point at their spouse or they'd say nobody. And I go, well, first of all, no, I am your friend. I am your friend. And here's what we do as friends. And we talk about things that matter to you, matter to me. I have confidence that if you needed me, I would be there and vice versa. That's bottom line what friends are all about. And so I began studying this more closely and realized that there's a way to make a friendship deeper and more enduring. And it's a ladder. It's a ladder of things that I talk about in my book. And it includes things like just being interested. asking somebody their name, finding out more about their story. And when you hear about their story, you don't say, well, yeah, I've done that too. No, that's not the point of this at this point. It's to just ask another question about their experience with it. Did they enjoy it? Uh, what would they do it again? Those kinds of things. At the right time, they'll ask you questions. So you don't have to stop them and tell your story. It gets into vulnerability. This becomes really important when you have a very casual relationship. You can talk about the weather. You can talk about, a favorite movie or book or TV show or something. But when you're into a deeper level of relationship, you're talking about things that matter to them. And you have to find out what those things are. It may be things that matter to you in your life, but it could be something that's in their life and that you don't really have that much experience about. But being interested and being vulnerable, being willing to share your own experience. I woke up one day, 10 years ago or so. I said, wow, I'm having this really great life. What could make it better? And I said, I could have deeper relationships with a few people. That would be a really sweet little thing to add to my life. And so I picked 6 friends. They were all males, and I've known them for a long, long time. And I went to them and I said, hey, I want to share with you something I'm struggling with. And I just, we've known each other for a long time. I just wonder if you have any thoughts or advice or experience with that issue. And when I started this, I realized I didn't think any of them would run away saying, wow, Rand's lived in California way too long. He turned into a weirdo. I didn't worry about that. But I also thought there was a big possibility that the needle would not move at all, because people weren't ready for that kind of relationship. But I'm very pleased to say that 5 out of 6 moved forward. They had good things for me to think about, and they began sharing their own things that I didn't know about, concerns they had, worries they had. Um, it was marvelous, and it's added a whole beautiful thing to my life, and I share that with other people. It's one of the chapters in the book, how to build relationships that are deep and enduring. There's a way to do it, absolutely. Um, I also have a chapter in that relationships with others about leadership and management. These are words that are often confused. They're not the same. They're not the same thing. I like Stephen Covey's explanation of this. He says that operational management is getting things done efficiently, but leadership is climbing the ladder to operational efficiency. But leadership is making sure the ladder's placed against the right wall.
Yep.
So I am a really great leader because I have vision, and I can articulate that vision, and I can inspire people in that direction. My management I've had to work at for many years because I'm not naturally built to be empathetic. I've had to work at that, and I'm much more empathetic than I certainly was years ago. And so but these are very different things. What your roles are, what your responsibilities are, how you think and how you behave. Nearly nobody I've ever met is really good at both. Or pillar 2 is relationships with.
I love talking about relationships because I personally think I'm like, oh, I wish my partner was just more like me. They could understand me. They were just like me. And I was like, actually, no, I don't. The world doesn't need another me. I've got my own flaws and my own challenges and that sort of stuff. And so relationships that can be challenging because you've got 2 different people essentially trying to relate and form a bond. And so there has definitely been times previously where I'm like, fuck it, you know what? It's easier just to live life by myself, be a hermit, and I'll just go through this life by myself. And while that might be easier, it's not nearly as fulfilling. And we're talking about thriving here and just the human connection. And then we talked about this earlier, that a diversity of thinking, of perceptions, expansion, what's possible for you. And I love what you mentioned as well, how you shared your connections with your male friends and how vulnerability really played into helping to build those connections. Because I think so often too, we can look at relationships as being like, well, I'm not going to share because they don't share. And it's like, well, what would happen if you took that first step? If you maybe gave permission or set the standard for what sort of relationship you wanted to have? If you want a relationship that's more honest and vulnerable, what would happen if you started off with that? And to your point, you had a really great reception from a large number of your friends who were really open and receptive for that. And look at the difference that made.
Yeah, it's spot on. Relationships take an investment. It's something that I've done, for much of my life. I've seen my father modeling that, and what that means is that you haven't heard from somebody. They're busy in their own lives. Maybe they don't live near you. So who's going to pick up the phone? Who's going to send the email?
Yeah.
Who's going to do that? And I am the person, more often than not, is the one who's initiating. And I have at times felt a little irritated and frustrated that I have to be the one to continue to do that. But the response is always overwhelmingly positive. Oh, I'm so glad. I apologize. I haven't been
Yeah.
in better contact. And yeah, wow, I miss you. And let's talk about this. Can we jump on the phone? Can we have a Zoom? Whatever. And so it just rekindles there. But I have to be the one, and I keep a list. I have a list on my desk of
Yeah.
the 20 or so people that I want to be in regular contact with. And I just go through that list and say, oh, this is a joke I think they'd like to hear. Or I haven't heard from them in a while, and I know their mom wasn't well. Let me check in with them. And it doesn't have to be about me. Sometimes I do talk about me. I've got things I like
Mm.
sharing, but I start off with them. And but I'm willing to make the investment in the portfolio of life. And I don't like to use the word balance because that sounds like a teeter-totter. You're balancing two things. The portfolio is the integration of things. And I in one of those 7 different segments of my life is relationships with others, and that's family and friends. And so I've got to think to myself, wait a minute, pause, take a look. What's going on? When did you last have a good conversation with somebody about this person, this particular person about that? And reach out. Be that person for them.
Mm.
And I, it's very fulfilling. It helps me thrive.
I love that because I'm that person who forgets to reply text messages. I reply in the moment or it's like 3 days later and I'm like, "I am so sorry." And so I so appreciate when my friends proactively reach out, and I made a commitment to at least respond within 24 hours and more proactively reach out. And so I love your tactic of having that list of 20 people who you want to keep in touch with and having that as a visual reminder, because I know that's something that would definitely help me. It's like, because often you pay attention to the things that are in your immediate environment, right? Like I'm always interacting with my family who are around and stuff. Having that visual cue of the people who I also want to be connected with that I might not see as often is such a great visual cue to keep in contact with those relationships.
Well, I just finished reading a great book. I'm reading all the time, and I just finished reading this amazing book, Atomic Habit,
Yes.
uh, James Clear, and he talks about the visual cue as being the number one cue. And so I've been doing that all along. If I have to remember to take something the next day, I put it right in the front hall near the front door. I put a little post-it note somewhere, the visual cue. It really helps me follow through. It helps me with the habit and the reinforcement of the habit. Um, I,
Yeah.
I want to mention another really important book, which is Essentialism. Essentialism. The subtitle of that book is The Disciplined Pursuit of Less. So one of our family mantras is less is more. And my wife and I, get invited to do something else and we go, wow, we'd like to, but it'd be better for us to just relax and take some time off. And maybe we'll catch up with that event or something next year or something like that. So making big choices about how you're spending your time. This is one of the huge powers we have in our lives, the power to choose how we spend our time and with whom. And so Essentialism is a brilliant, brilliant book. He makes the same point again and again, but in all these different arenas of life. I've done a lot of work in my career on strategy, and I thought I'll just skip that chapter. I could write the chapter, I could write the book, but and I read the chapter and go, wow, really learning a lot here. It really turned me around in thinking about the number one most important thing for an organization to do. Not the three, not the five, the one most
One.
important thing. And that takes really hard work to think about that. And then aligning people and reaching a buy-in about that extra work.
Yeah. Yeah. What's coming to mind when I hear you talk about that is a lot of the time we think more is more, right? More possessions, more things, more money is what we should be aiming for, but it's really not always the case. I know a lot of people who have more, but if we're looking to really thrive, that's not necessarily the equation. More doesn't equal thriving. And I really love what you mean by the disciplined pursuit of less. What a great subtitle. Because
That's
it
the great.
does require, yeah, it does require a lot of discipline to have less in today's world because so much is available, so much is accessible to us. It requires hard work to be able to sift through all the things and really decipher what is truly important.
In my book, I have a lot of quotes, and in fact, if your readers, your listeners go to my website, you can download a PDF of about 3 quotes by chapter that are
Oh,
just
nice.
amazing, and one of them relates very much to what we were just talking about, and that's when I'm doing public talking, I say, "What kind of pirate do you want to be? Do you want to treasure your possessions, or do you want to treasure your relationships? What kind of
I like
pirate do you want to be?"
it. Ooh. Ooh,
Pirate.
that's a good question. I like that. It's a very good question. And so we've talked about thriving with others. What's pillar 3?
Pillar 3 is thriving out in the world.
Oh,
And so I have 2 chapters in that one. Uh, and one is being generous, being charitable, philanthropic, and being of service. And a lot of people, again, they use the word charity and philanthropy interchangeably, but they are different. Charity has more to do with solving an immediate problem. Somebody's hungry. Somebody, just went through a terrible storm and they lost their house or something. And so you're stepping in to help that person, that community. Philanthropy is much more about fundamental causes. What systemically is going on and what can we do about that? That would mean things like giving people education so that they can go on about living life independently and living well. And being of service is lots of different ways. I mean, I've been on a dozen or more boards in my life, uh, but my wife and I also are the volunteers at our local marsh. We are technically the environmental stewards of that marsh. My
yeah,
wife says,
cool.
"Get over yourself. We pick weeds. We take out the non-native invasives. Don't get ahead of yourself." But being of service is another thing, and you don't have to wait till you're 65 and, finished
Mm,
up your day job. You can do this now. You can, if you have kids in school, you can be there doing a little bit. You can, you know, just do something you like, show up with cheerfulness, with energy,
mm,
follow through with your commitment. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Those kinds of things. So that's one of the two. The other chapter in this thriving out in the world is about our environment, conservation of the environment. And what would we have, Mother Nature, if we continued to abuse Mother Nature?
mm.
So it's a chapter about that and very specific things we can do. People think they vote, once a year or whatever in elections, but in fact, we're voting every day. We're voting on what to buy. We're voting on getting ourselves organized. So you take one trip and make 3 stops. It's a lot more efficient. We're putting on a sweater rather than pumping up the heat. There are things that we're doing every day, making choices that have a big impact on the natural world that we live in. And In some cases, it's about trying to say we don't need another development project. What we need is to plant more trees. So it's a whole beautiful chapter about that, and that's the two chapters in the thriving out in the world.
And it's such an important step because I feel like, and when I get what I experience with a lot of my clients is it's often they come to me because they're experiencing challenges in their own world and we work through those together. And what I love about what you mentioned about thriving out in the world is taking a step outside of your world and being part of something greater than yourself. I say it very directly when I find myself doing this is sometimes I just need to get my head out of my own ass and realize that there is more to life than just my world and the people in it. And I find that doing those things like being charitable really support me to realize there is so much more to the world than me and my problems. It doesn't mean that they're insignificant. It just means that there's other things that could probably be more pressing or more important at a particular time. So I find that particular chapter would really supports me with that sort of stuff too.
Well, I've met thousands of people in my various capacities, and I've been social for a long time, so I'm meeting new people all the time. I've been a scoutmaster and little league coach, and had lots and lots of clients over the years. And the people who I think are often struggling are people who are very self-focused, maybe even
Yes,
narcissistic,
that's a
where
better way to put it.
where when I really am really zooming along, I lose track of time. That's a really good signal to me. Wow, I'm doing something really that fits me so well. I'm happy with that. But I become invisible. I use that term. It's not about me anymore. It's about this other person. It's about the project. And I'm just applying myself with the tools and the talents that I have, that I've honed and worked on, and it's a joy. But it's not about me. It's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about being invisible and working on the other project, the other person.
I love it. I love it. And so pillar 4, how do we wrap this up?
Yeah, pillar 4 is kind of the wrap up. It's not necessarily uh, it's not a linear progression because thriving by moving ever forward in life, there are things that you can start doing in middle age or younger, even habits and ways of approaching life. But it's a whole book about you got to hold the rein. Who is driving the vehicle? Who's deciding how fast to go and when to stop and when to turn right and left? These are choices. This is the power we have again to decide who we are and what we're all about in life. And that I recommend to people uh, write write down your legacy. Think about who you are and carve your name on hearts, not on marble, not on the tombstone. And once you have a clarity about your legacy, then you can live it now. You could be age 40 and be living that legacy. I am happy to share what I am living my legacy as, and it's a 4-part thing. It being excellent, and I started this back in high school, and everything I do, whether it's relationships or projects, I have a very high bar. I want it to be of great quality. A second dimension then is having purpose. So, I meet people all the time where they have managed to achieve enough financial wherewithal that they don't need to work anymore, and then they fall off a cliff. They don't have purpose anymore, and maybe the purpose they used to have was making money, and they hated their boss and they hated what they were doing. But to not have purpose at all is not a good thing. I've seen people just shrivel. Not a good thing. Have purpose. A third is to be encouraging. So that's kind of what my book is really directed to try to encourage people, to inspire people to move on and get on with life. I mentor people, and I'm delighted to share what I can and help people by being encouraging. And then the last one is about love, but I don't mean love in a sort of Valentine's Day kind of way. I'm not talking about romantic or private love. Although when people have it, I'm delighted. I have that, and I know how that feels, and it's a marvelous thing. I'm talking about something bigger. I'm talking about a social good, not a private good.
Mm.
I'm talking about love as a way of being. And you can be that
Yeah.
person every day by being kind, by being respectful, by listening, by asking good questions, by performing acts of loving kindness, whether it's with animals or Mother Nature or other people. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I meet somebody new and I say their name 3 times so I can remember it. And a few days later, I meet them again, and I say, "Hey, Denise, how are you today?" And can't believe you remember my name. And I say, "Yeah, Rand," because they'll remember my name. And it just they light up. It's like a light bulb going on for them. I often have the feeling that that little interaction I have with somebody, especially if they're a server who's kind of not being
Yeah.
appreciated, that it's the best part of their day. That
Yep.
somebody actually was interested in them. That's that that's living love. Life is way.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And to your point, it's a lot of these things, it's doesn't cost us money. It's just a committed choice to doing and being the thing, right? Like it doesn't involve all these resources and it's not necessarily something that's overly hard. It's just choosing to be someone who does this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And so is there anything else you'd like to share with listeners who are looking to thrive? Is there anything else they need to know about thriving?
Well, one of the little tools that has stood me in incredibly good in a good way for a very long time, again, back to in my formation stage, is journaling. I journal and I chronicle what's going on in my life. It always amazes my wife at the first few days of the new year. I say, let's talk about what happened this past year. And I break it down to about 15 different categories. And some of it's the vacations, the number of nights we were away from home, or new people we've met, or events we went to, all those kinds of things. But I've also added new new people this year and best decisions last year. So I'm
Yeah.
chronicling that. And it has this amazing way of making me appreciate this walk through life. And it helps my wife remember, oh my gosh, that's right. This is the
Yeah.
third time we've done X, and I'd forgotten about the other two. So thank you very much for that. Uh, Journaling, I also do journaling when I'm a little emotionally conflicted and I'm confused. And a lot of our emotions are not simple things. It's not like hate or well, forget hate. I'm angry. No, there's a ball of wax around it. And I have to spend some time breaking up whatever's going on into the sub pieces and then take a look at what those are and what I'm doing that is making it worse or who else is involved with it that I maybe need to go have a conversation with and take a little bit of risk with that in that conversation about, hey, I got to tell you, last time we got together and such happened, and I got to tell you, I felt really badly about that. It kind of made me feel, and I put the right words to it. And can we talk about that? Uh, so journaling is very, very helpful there. And as a third part of this is the idea of planning. I am a superb planner and I plan the whole year. So I start off in January with what's the year ahead like? What are big things that are going to be happening? And yes, there's these trips, and I say, oh well, let's look at our calendar and have this trip in this time, and we can move it around a little bit later. And there are things we need to do for the house, or it's a big birthday, or and I list those things out. Some are maintenance level things, and some are new ideas. I go, wow, let's try this. Um, Starts with the annual, then I break it down to the monthly. So this is the right month to do of the annual things. This is the right month to do that. Then I have a weekly schedule. I roll it forward, the monthly into a weekly, and then I have a daily, which actually starts the night before. So I have my next day's list of things that I want to do. I know what the priorities are. I always get the top priorities done. Some of the other lesser things, again, this disciplined pursuit of less, may get bumped into the next day. That's okay. But nothing of importance gets forgotten or dropped off. And it's just a way. And I know then I need to get up extra early, or I need to tell somebody I might be running a few minutes late because I'm going from here to there. And would that be okay? And it just allows me to be on my game, but in a relaxed way.
Yeah.
It's a great thing. So I recommend to your listeners that those are great tools, amazingly valuable tools to me in my life.
Yeah. And it sounds like what are keys in those tools is the ability to reflect and then also proactively plan. I think it's quite hard to get into that state of thriving if we're constantly reacting to things or just moving from one thing to the next, not really reassessing what's working well, what do I enjoy, and all that sort of stuff. And you've provided such incredible tools so far on the podcast. I would love to hear what's a really actionable step the listeners could take in the next 24 to 48 hours if they're looking to start their journey to thriving. Everything's okay in their life, nothing's seriously wrong, but they're like listening to this, they're like, my standard is thriving now. Let's go.
Well, Myth, I very much appreciate the questions and the conversation we've had. And I don't mean to sound too much like a commercial, but the best thing people could do is buy my book. And you can get it as an ebook or paperback or hardback. I am starting actually next week on the audiobook, but that won't be out for a few more months. There is so much in this book that we have not even covered. And it's a book for people, as I said at the outset, in all stages of life, at every age. Speaking next week at a retirement home and about what is aging well. We all age, but we don't all age well. What is that about? There's so many topics here that people, I mean, hundreds of 5-star reviews saying this book was so invaluable to me. I didn't even realize some of the things that I wasn't thinking about or doing. And, so without sounding too much like a commercial, if your listeners go and check out my book, you can go to my website, randselig.com, RANDSELIG. If it hasn't been convincing enough, you can read more about the book and the description, my bio. You can read 6 unbelievable testimonials. And as I mentioned before, a few minutes back, there's this PDF of quotes, which I think are very juicy, organized by chapter. So you can go right there. And there's a way of contacting me. So if somebody says, I didn't understand X, or I want to know more about Y, or why didn't you include something, or please, the next version of your book, it'd be great if you could do this. Or if you want to book me to talk, it's all there. And of course, you can order the book. The book is available on Amazon, but all the independent stores too, like Barnes and Noble.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'll put all those links in the show notes below. But thank you so much, Rand. I'm actually really excited to get a copy of your book. I think it's been such an expansive conversation for myself. Again, you think you might know a thing or two in these areas, but I'll tell you what, there's always something new you can learn. So if you're being challenged by the concept of thriving in your own life, I encourage you to look at Rand's book as well. I know I've got a lot out of this, and I've read a number of books on this subject as well. So really, really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us today.
Been my absolute pleasure, Miss.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I hope this was helpful. If you thought of someone while listening to this podcast, I would be so grateful if you could share this episode with them. While you're doing that, please also take a moment to leave a review on the podcast if you haven't yet already. It takes less than a minute and it means so much to me and helps this podcast to reach more people just like you. Thank you so much for that, and I'll see you in the next episode. In the meantime, go out and achieve every dream you have, because actually, you can.